Two best friends found shot to death in a rural home near Chrisman, Illinois. Today we're going to be talking about the unsolved double homicides of Ryan Riddell and Mark Prasse. So January 28th, 2008 is when Ryan Riddell and his best friend Mark Prasse were found shot to death in Mark's home, which is located in rural Chrisman, Illinois. This is a really frustrating case because it happened in 2008, still unsolved, no real leads, only been one person of interest that was ever publicly named. But I do feel like the cops are close to making an arrest. So that's why I wanted to highlight this case, because sometimes it just takes one little piece of the puzzle and then it's solved. So let's get into what happened on that January day. So Mark and Ryan had both worked the whole day. Ryan had actually driven to Mark's home and picked him up and took him to a meeting that he had in nearby Tuscola, Illinois. And the meeting was about 4 p.m. Now, this is something that Ryan did on a regular basis. Picked him up after the meeting. They were on their way home. They did make a pit stop at a gas station. So that's time stamped around 7:30 p.m. And then from there, Ryan was just supposed to go to Mark's house, drop him off, be home for dinner around 8. At the time of Ryan's death, he was married and he did have a baby on the way, a baby son. When he didn't show up by 10 o'clock, obviously his wife was frantic. She called Ryan's stepmother and said, "Hey, have you heard from Ryan?" Ryan's stepmother tried calling him, couldn't get a hold of Ryan or Mark. So Ryan's wife and his stepmom were both concerned that they'd been in a car accident, which of course would be the first thing that comes to mind. So Ryan's stepmother was actually the one that called the sheriff's department and said, "Hey, can you just do a wellness check?" Gave him Mark's address. The sheriff goes over to Mark's house and finds both men shot to death. And really the only details of the crime scene are that they were found inside the house, lying on the floor, no signs of forced entry, nothing that they knew of had been removed from the house. Police have purposely been tight-lipped, so I feel like there's a lot more about the crime scene and there's a lot more about this crime than they're giving out, and they have actually even said that. The lead investigator on the case, her name is Cessna. She has said that the police have purposely kept a lot of details of the crime to themselves. I should mention there is a $25,000 reward leading to the arrest and conviction of whoever did this. So to keep the integrity of anonymous tips intact, they've kept things private. It's not unusual for police to do that. That way they know when they get a legitimate tip in, they're going to know that this is information the general public did not know. So, of course, what do? You look at the family, you look at friends, you look, okay, were these guys involved in anything? Is there anything in their background that would have warranted somebody shooting them to death? By all accounts, Ryan and Mark were both stand-up guys. Both worked full-time, no criminal background, and trust me, the cops said that they looked exhaustively into their background. They couldn't find any criminal activity of any sort. In fact, Cessna, the lead investigator in the case, said they have exhausted something like 13 tips and leads throughout the years. So they have looked into this. This is still, although an unsolved case, she is very adamant that this is still an active case, and she actively looks at this file. She said she thinks about this case when she's on vacation. She thinks about this case all the time. She wants to see it solved. The only thing that's really odd, and this is where the little twist in the case comes in, a few months earlier, so in the summer of, I believe it was June 2007, Ryan had actually been taken hostage in what turned out to be one of the deadliest crime sprees that Douglas County had seen. So Ryan was at his home. His home was located in Villa Grove, Illinois. He and two of his friends happened to be on the porch drinking. 3 men drove by, saw them, just happenstance to see them, stopped at the house, took them hostage, tied them up, took Ryan's van, drove it to a nearby bank where they tried to rob the bank. There was a whole standoff. A police officer was shot and killed. I believe one of the criminals was shot as well. They were ultimately arrested and sentenced, to prison. So, of course, people are thinking that's such an odd thing. It can't be a coincidence. oh my gosh, what if this was gang related? What if this was retaliation for Ryan having been taken hostage? But police have extensively looked into that, and the criminals that were involved in this bank robbery standoff actually were not in a gang. They had no gang connections. They were just criminals. So it's just one of those weird coincidences that happens. And in fact, one of the men who had tied up Ryan and taken him hostage said he was really funny and was really quick-witted, and that's one of the reasons why they didn't hurt him. They just left him and took his van. So it makes it even more puzzling because this happened in around small towns in the areas. Of course, people are thinking, were they involved in like some sort of mafia connection? Was this an assassination? Cops have been quick to discredit that. Now, while they do feel that the two men were purposely targeted, they do not feel that this was an assassination. So that tells me they don't think it was a professional hit or something like that. And I think it's interesting to note that they say both men were targeted because this did happen at Mark Prasse's house. And I will put up a picture of his home. You would have to know where he lived to get there. I mean, it's in the country and it's down a winding driveway that you cannot easily see from the road. So it would be very easy for them to assume, okay, Mark Prasse must have been involved in something and Ryan Riddell was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But no, they feel that both men are targeted. That's also why I feel like the cops know more than what they're saying. So they must know something and just haven't had enough evidence to make that arrest. So yeah, it's extra sad that Ryan had a baby on the way, a baby boy that he never got to see. A few years ago, Ryan's mother passed away, which is, heartbreaking that she never got to see her son's killer brought to justice. And in fact, Ryan's stepfather said, you know what, I'm going to keep this case alive. I have to find his killer for my wife's sake. There is a Facebook page that I will link as well where they are accepting tips. And like I said, there is a $25,000 reward leading to the arrest and conviction of whoever is responsible for this. And it's just sitting there. So if anybody does have any, knowledge of this, I'm obviously going to put up the number to call, and you can leave anonymous tips there. But it is really sad, and it's just one of those that has left me puzzled because there's so little details about the case. And it just doesn't seem like these two men that were, by all accounts, stand-up guys, like, why would they have been targeted? There is a Reddit thread that I found that I will link as well, in which somebody who must have been from the area, because it seemed like they knew this case very well, apparently a cop that worked for the Danville Police Department at the time was talked to as a person of interest. That does not mean a suspect, but he was a person of interest. They felt like he had too much firsthand knowledge of the case, but they talked to him and then nothing ever happened with that. So, just another lead that became a dead end. So I would love to see this crime solved for the family's sake and, for both Ryan and Mark's sake as well, because they seemed like really good guys. So, hopefully we can get some tips in and we can get this solved and their family will be able to sleep at night knowing that their killers have been brought to justice. Guys, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you want to hear about more murders in the Midwest, subscribe to this channel. I will post new videos weekly. Again, if you know anything about this case or if you've heard of this case, please comment below. And as always, if you have any cases that you would like me to highlight here, drop me a comment, message me. I'm always interested in hearing about unsolved crimes.